Yesterday, we celebrated the life of Helen Lenzi, who was a member of this congregation for over 60 years, 2/3 of her own life and nearly half the life of this congregation. Helen was an amazing woman, as many of you know firsthand. It was an honor, a privilege, a pleasure for me to be able to play a role in our service yesterday. Celebrations of life, as we often call memorials, are among my favorite parts of my job, to be honest. There is a truth that comes with sitting with families as they navigate loss and remember one they loved. There's a truth that comes when we share the story of the life of a member of our human family. There's a truth that comes in the ritual moments of our lives, from birth to death. And being part of speaking, marking, creating, and living that kind of truth is, for me, extremely fulfilling. Being invited into these moments of your lives, being allowed to walk with you as you pass through these times on your own journey, I'm so grateful that you give me that privilege. Yesterday was also our first time with our new technology. We upgraded the equipment in Anderson this past week so that now we can be on Zoom and in person. And what that means is that if you're watching on Zoom from home, you will hear Ron play the piano and see him at it in Anderson. And you'll see me and anyone else at the podium, and you'll see the Vilonis sculpture. And that for those of us in person, we'll get to see on the projector the slides that run on Zoom and any of you on Zoom who are speaking in the service from home. There are definitely kinks to work out, and with this upgrade, there will be another learning curve, just as there was when we first had to move our services online. Our journey has taken another turn, and we'll embrace it and figure it out, and slowly but surely, we will learn to make the very best use of the technology we have. But you can bet your bottom dollar that on Friday and even yesterday morning, I was fretting, to say the least, about the new technology. I was worried about whether or not we could learn it fast enough, if it would work, would it look seamless and elegant for Helen's celebration? Would it do all the things I imagined in my mind it could do? Would it be perfect? I was sharing my worries with a friend, and he reminded me, if we have learned nothing else during this pandemic year, we've all learned to offer each other a bit more grace, especially around technology. His gentle reminder was so important and so needed, and I was grateful for it because it's true. We roll with the punches these days, troubleshooting on the fly and making it work. And we all know that some things are bizarrely, simply out of our hands. We humans create, but we don't always have full control over the things our ingenuity produces. We do, however, control our offering of grace. And of course, we haven't just learned to be more gracious about technology, we've learned to do it across the board. We're more gentle with one another when we forget a meeting or show up late, when our Zoom background is our clearly messy room or our children show up, when we speak honestly about the struggles we are having to keep it all together. And what all that amounts to, that compassion and kindness and forbearance, it's a kind of grace. We don't really talk much about grace in Unitarian Universalist circles. I think for many, it smacks too much of Christian theologies that we rejected or that rejected us. But by now, you know that I am loath to toss out spiritual or religious concepts that hold big truths we can learn from. Even if we do, even if we do ditch the harmful theology attached to them. And grace is one of those big concepts that I don't want to let go of. In Christianity, grace is predominantly understood as a gift from God, a gift that is spontaneous, given by God because God wants to, independent of anything we've done or not done. And often it is understood as undeserved. The framing is that we humans don't deserve God's spontaneous and independent care, but that when God chooses to, God will give it anyway. So I can absolutely see why UUs toss this notion. We read into this theology correctly in the case of many versions of Christianity, a presupposition that humans need grace from God because they are sinful, fallen, lacking redemption, and fundamentally undeserving. And so indeed, grace predicated on the idea that humanity has fallen and is sinful has no place in our Unitarian Universalism. But I think we can understand grace differently. I want to understand it differently. What we've inherited as Unitarian Universalists is a deep belief in the potential for good in every human, a belief in the inherent value, worth, dignity, and promise of every person. Our forebears primarily did not believe in the idea that humans had fallen from God's favor for some offense at Eden in the beginning of time. They believed that truth exists in story, the lessons can be found in literature, but they did not believe in the literal interpretation of words written millennia ago in a certain place and time by human minds and hands. It's no wonder that our two ancestral lines found their way to one another. While, of course, there were some practical matters at hand, a shared commitment to justice and the ability to do more to further that commitment when their ranks were joined, there were also theological and spiritual overlaps that made the coming together of the Unitarians and the Universalists sensible and even visionary. Their theologies had different nuances, of course. The Unitarians believed in Jesus's humanity, not divinity, and in a singular God, not a Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. They believed that reason and science and the rational pursuit of knowledge held a place in religious life, alongside the interpretation of sacred texts that were, though sacred, not infallible or static. They believed in history and humanity and the evolution of life and this earth, and the evolution of our understanding. The Universalists believed in God's love and goodness. They believed that hell and the devil were accreted fabrications because a loving parent who created humanity would never condemn their creation to pain and suffering for all eternity. They believed that we owed to each other as siblings in the human family the kind of love and care that God intended to show each of us. The theologies are in many ways adjacent. They privilege love, kindness, goodness, and oneness. They privilege a vision of humanity as full of potential and promise, capable of growth, and that is key. Neither the Unitarians nor the Universalists believed that they had arrived at the truth with a capital T, at the only way to be, at the one right answer. They allowed for a diversity of belief, of lifestyle, of ritual, of philosophy. They understood a model of human living and understanding as evolving, progressing, changing, integrating new information and new experiences. They were not rigid. They believed in a continual becoming, an ongoing journey. When they joined together 60 years ago in 1961, they each moved even more fully into non-dogmatic, open, and embracing positions that lifted up diverse theologies, engaged social justice to create the world their God would have wanted for us, and strengthened an already deep commitment to community. Unitarian Universalism was born of this union of two separate branches, and it has grown in these past decades, evolving into its own identity, distinct from, but descended from, those two original U's. And what have we become? I think I preach on this once a year directly, and I think every Sunday I preach on it indirectly. Ask any UU who we are, and you'll probably get a different answer. That's the old joke, at least. It's probably accurate to some degree. But I actually think if you then press any UU, keep asking questions, you'll probably land in pretty much the same place. A place where compassion and justice and free thought and grace, though they might not use that term, are what matter most. I told you before we showed the video of Alandria reading her own poetry that she died this past year, and that many of my colleagues were friends with her or had worked with her. I never did, and I wish I'd had that opportunity. Her words capture a central part of what I believe it means to be a Unitarian Universalist today. And they speak to this concept of grace that I'm determined to help us recover. We are worthy, she writes, not because of what we produce, but because of who we are. We are divine bodies of light and darkness. You are not worthy because of what you offer, not because of what is in your mind or for the support you give others, not for what you give at all. We are worthy and are whole just because. That is a theology of love born from traditions that rejected the notion that some would be tortured forever and some would get lucky. That is a theology of justice and empowerment, a theology of equality and a theology of grace, not from God, but from each other. You, me, we are worthy of love, compassion, kindness, forgiveness, understanding, not because God says we're worthy, not because we have something to offer the world that is more precious than what anyone else offers, not because of what we create to further the economy, not because of what we give to others to help prove that we're deserving. We have nothing to prove. We are worthy inherently from the moment we arrive into this life. We are worthy of the spontaneous, unsought gift of gentleness and love. And what's more, what lies at the heart of our Unitarian Universalism is not only that we each are worthy, beloved, inherently deserving of grace, but that each of us also has the capacity to offer that unsought gift to others. Each and every one of us can give grace to another, is called to give that grace through activism, through loving, through compassion, kindness. Each of us is whole and wholly beautiful, and each of us can affirm another's wholeness and beauty. The heart of a theology that lets go of grace given by a God in the sky and brings grace down here onto this earth as something we offer one another as human beings, the heart of that theology is the understanding of community. In a community, we are held, but we are also beholden. We are loved, but also we are called to love. And in community, there is so much power. We become so powerful when built on a foundation of grace and love. We build up communities of care and commitment. I'm actually not sure I know what it means to do Unitarian Universalism alone. For all its freedom of thought and diversity, Unitarian Universalism is a shared endeavor. It's commitment and care and witness and love and grace given and received each to each. It's that thing that happens when life and circumstance cause us to doubt hope, doubt our worth, doubt our power, and still we are reminded of them by others with whom we share a commitment to presence, to vision, and to purpose. Yesterday was our first in-person memorial for a congregant in over 18 months. You may remember that just before the shutdown in March of 2020, we had had a handful of celebrations of life. It was a couple of painful months in the life of our congregation. But for the last 18 months, we've missed out on in-person ritual, just as we have missed out on in-person Sunday services. And I didn't know what it would feel like to be back. I started this sermon by telling you that I was nervous about the technology and how that would go. But the truth is, I was also nervous about how it would feel in my body, in my heart, my soul, to be back in that space with some of you. Would it feel like riding a bike, or would I stumble and fall, figuratively speaking? Would I find it all sort of matter of fact, or would I weep? Would something be meaningful in ways I had forgotten? Yesterday, the tears came and my heart swelled many times, but there was a moment that filled me and reminded me in ways unexpected of what this is all about. And that moment was when, behind the masks they were wearing to protect other members of our community, our people spoke the words of the chalice lighting together aloud, in unison, for the first time in so long. Every Sunday, we hear those words in our online service, and while I like them, the words are not the thing, not really. The words alone don't actually touch my being. I was reminded yesterday that it's the blending of voices, the knowledge that you all know these words, share these words. It was the audible truth, loud and clear, that voices raised together create something different, beautiful, new, and more. It reminded me of all the truths I know about where we come from and who we are and what we do and why we do it. In that brief moment, our past, our present, and our future blended into one, and the power and necessity of our community was so clear to me. We're Unitarian Universalists. We don't always agree. We don't need to. We can believe different things, have different passions, view the world through our own eyes, and still we come. Still we gather through challenge and argument and disappointment and hopelessness. We gather, we show up here for each other, out there in the world for the things we care about. We build community. We commit to each other. We believe in change and possibility and hope and the journey. We believe that simply because we exist, each and every one of us has the capacity and is called to offer love and to change this world. We believe that simply because we exist, each and every one of us is deserving of each other's human grace and compassion. We believe that simply because we exist, each and every one of us is beautiful and whole and worthy. And we believe that each and every one of us, simply because we exist, is loved. And we know that when we forget, we can help each other remember.